So we had a bit of a hassle this morning because the laptop didn't start, and in a hotel room and nowhere another laptop. And so everything crashed, and we are very happy to be here. And Oleg is here.
Yes,
So
hi everyone.
hi, everyone. Good morning. So then we can start. Today's session at the aiLight program is about the Swiss Public Inference Utility, and our guest is Oleg Lavrovsky. And as I mentioned on LinkedIn, maybe some of you have seen it. In my opinion, Oleg is the guy in Switzerland who supported Apertus in a very, very active way during the last year. And I'm very happy that he is here as our guest and to introduce the Swiss Public Inference Utility. And I'm remembering, Oleg, of a picture of you waiting at night for the launch of Apertus on Hugging Face. I think it was a black and white picture, and you were sitting there and waiting, right? It was at 12 or something, or
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I remember I was pretty excited. I mean, it's like, the experience, it's like a communal experience, like waiting outside the Apple store for, one of those
Yeah,
discs that come along.
yeah, like
Just great.
that, right? So Oleg is a data engineer and developer,
Mhm.
relations specialist with a strong open source technology expertise. So I'm experienced. So all I have learned about open source, I have learned from Oleg during the last year.
Okay.
So thanks for that. And he is also engaged with Public AI. Public AI is a provider of the Apertus on a chat interface on one side, right? And Public AI made it possible last year, just punctual to the launch of the Swiss AI Weeks at that time, that the people and the developers at the hackathons could access Apertus during a chat interface at that time. And that was really a great team effort, when I
Mhm.
remember right. And so I'm very happy that you are here. Now you are a technical community manager at the EPFL AI Center for some weeks now. So maybe you can share also a bit about that. And so I'm happy that it's working. And I would like to hand over to you and wishing us a great session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabine. It's really wonderful to see you all, and to feel like we've got really like a kind of despite all the things going on in the world, despite all the things going on in Switzerland. I mean, some people right now are having a really hard time even tearing themselves away from the news. But it's really great to be here and to discuss this in this little short time. So thank you, Sabine, for pulling this off despite the hurdles. I'm going to see if I can share something with you. I'm going to have to say this. This is going to be very spontaneous and hopefully interactive. At any point, please feel free to jump in and expand. I know there are people here like Vasco, let's see this quick list. Let's see, it's got Thomas, we got Florian and Zoe. I mean, I'm noticing a lot of names here on the call, people who have been involved with Apertus and all these things. And just please correct me if I'm wrong. Please jump in if you want to expand on something or have a question we're talking about. So can you see my screen now? I should be sharing a little slide.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Good. So I'd like just to warm us up with a couple of points. So as Sabine mentioned, it's been quite a roller coaster ride since the 2nd of September. Really, I feel personally that we've been working on this topic for a long, long time. I came to school to Switzerland to study mathematics and then communication systems at the EPFL, and I have all my life, like as long as I can remember, been just fascinating with this computer interface, with this ability to put in some code and get some result. And, everyone who knows me knows how I have a special relationship to computers. And fundamentally, I'm an IT guy. I help people as much as I can just to solve everyday problems. Just a few minutes ago, trying to get Sabine's MacBook keyboard screen fixed. It's like, what can you do? Well, computers are getting smarter and smarter. And I had I had this kind of topic that emerged over the years. This was thanks to people like Verena, Anna, who are now heading the Open Data Project. we've been using this hackathon format to organize work, right? So bringing people together to work with their computers, work together and produce a result, right? And this has led to a lot of great applications, a lot of interesting results. But hackathons are really the starting point, right? So the Swiss AI Weeks hackathons where we met, where we started working on Apertus, that's the beginning of hopefully a long journey for this project of Swiss AI development. It's not the beginning, it's not the end. But the question I'd like to talk to you today is about reliable public services, or how they like to call them in Switzerland, la service public, right? So these slides are kind of a general introduction to the Apertus project, and then I'll switch over to go into a little bit more detail about the Swiss Public Inference Utility, this SPIU cooperative that we're starting. So you've seen all this before, and if you look behind me, you can also see it. So really, the Apertus project, this is the key, this key development, but it's not the only AI model coming out of Switzerland. It's just the most open, the most current, the most actively developed right now, one of the most actively developed right now, and it was the trigger for us to get going, right? So what is Apertus? Open data, open source, open weights. It's one of the uniquely accessible models in the world, focusing on being able to reproduce and continue the effort anywhere. It was also trained very sustainably in Switzerland, released in version 1.0 on September. Fully transparent in the sense that also that the training data is as compliant as possible with Swiss and European laws, so we can have interesting mechanisms of legal control that are just not yet possible today in a lot of AI products. It has also unique multilingual capabilities, thanks to the work of many researchers over the years who have been trying to represent also global languages. So, those languages which there's not a lot of content in are also naturally represented in the model, which means that in many cases you can even use a combination of several languages to interact with the LLM. And it's also fully open source in the sense of being Apache 2 licensed, commercial use is allowed, and there's lots of customization recipes so you can use it. So that's just a 2-minute intro to the Apertus project. But what is Apertus really? Apertus is science. Apertus is a large language model. It is not ChatGPT. It is not a product. It is like, think of it as a big database or just a big file you can download off the internet and use in some way, right? And it's extremely flexible. Like, you can use it in a million different ways. And it's a compacted definition of a neural network, which has been pre-trained on trillions of bits of information, but it's not something necessarily that you're going to be able to use out of the box, right? We know about other LLMs, like DeepSeek and Qwen. We know about, of course, maybe Meta Llama, which was one of the first open source LLM, and even OpenAI creates now open source LLM models that are distributed. But what we don't really see in this chart is like the amount of products that gets developed around these AI projects. So even if we have like some really good unique features towards the Apertus model, that doesn't immediately translate to being able to use it in every context. But this fact that at the foundation of what we're doing, there's this ethical and highly compliant AI is really important. And it's what I've linked here is to this trade agreement between Switzerland and the EU. So basically, Swiss companies, every Swiss company that's using AI, which is every Swiss company, needs to really be aware of this and to consider it. But also Apertus is not a Swiss product for Switzerland. It's a Swiss product for the world, right? So we're trying to create a project that, that is at the level of these frontier models, that these world-class models. This is a chart comparing the benchmark results from the paper. So, this changes over time as new versions come out, of course, and it is competitive, right? As a model, it is competitive. That doesn't mean you're going to get amazing results from it out of the box, but when the numbers don't lie, it is on paper and in benchmarks a really good model. So yeah, again, LLM is not a chatbot. And there are already first applications, right? I mean, this is why we had these hackathons, where I got involved as the community member. We really wanted to see what we can do with Apertus out of the box, because we're early adopters. We're people like myself, who have some background in computer science, machine learning, and we know how to run an LLM, and we know that within certain contexts, it can actually be really useful. The most prominent example is the Zurich City GPT from the company Leap that is up and running at oss.zurichcitygpt.ch. If you're a citizen in Switzerland, or you're just curious how AI can support your life as a resident of the city, you can use this chatbot, and it will access both the kind of city data sources. It has an actual RAG that was trained on the information that's relevant to people in Zurich, as well as having this innovative Apertus model. And you can also compare the OpenAI version and the Apertus model within the same platform. For me, the first project I did was on the DripDat tool. This is a hackathon organizing software. It's an open source package that I maintain, and I also embedded Apertus into it, so that for the Bern hackathon, which was here in Liebefeld, in what we effectively call Silicon Love Field, we could get instant answers, generate challenges, and really use Apertus within the platform of the hackathon itself. But of course, all the teams tried Apertus during our hackathon, and quite a few of them actually made really impressive demos out of it. I've just been hearing that one of those is going live in the next few days. So really, we have some great stories coming out of the hackathon in terms of taking this early release and putting it into a specific context where it's really making meaningful results. But finally, public AI. They were the first. They were the first to launch a website at publicai.co with Apertus in both formats, 8B and 70B, and they beat us all. They were there, and they were ready. And what public AI is, I'm going to explain a little bit more in detail in a second. But just keep in mind that this is now like the top production application with thousands of users, I think up to 30,000 user accounts, and people really playing around with Apertus on a daily basis, some of them probably using it for interesting things. And that's the #1 production use right now of Apertus. Quick thing about also sovereign AI, with Davos, so World Economic Forum going on. People are hopefully recognizing the fact that Switzerland is a neutral country in the Alps hosting this. And we're also working in a lot of projects to maintain democratic and fair dialogue, right? And Apertus is part of that mission, right? So having this trustworthy neutral base model developed within the supercomputing facilities that are otherwise also used, for high performance computing applications like weather prediction and so on, right? Having this multilingual aspect that helps, diplomacy and mediation, at least within the scientific community that uses this project, is really important. But the focus of my work is really the center part, the open source recipes and active community. So making really it easy for people to get started. And how do you get started? Okay, so this is what it looks like, right? So on launch day, we had this wonderful web page from Hugging Face where the Apertus model could be downloaded in 4 different variants. And you can click through to files, and you see there's this bunch of little files and then some really big files to download. And then you're just lost, right? I mean, you're like, what do I do with this? It's just like a Dropbox file dump, right? This situation has improved actually a lot over the past months, because now you can actually play with Apertus directly on this page. But obviously, this is a platform aimed at AI developers, at people who know this, how to work with these technologies like transformers, and who really use this to plug it into their engineering efforts. Non-technical users, I really encourage you to, even if you're not a developer, to still go on Hugging Face, at least to give Apertus your heart. Like, you can just log in an account and just give it a star, right? It really makes a difference. So, it's like Hugging Face is a lot like GitHub and these other technical community forums. There is actually a discussion area as well. You can ask for a question. You can ask for a new feature. You can see there's various issues being debated. And Hugging Face will also be the hub from which many apps will be able to load Apertus. So even like right now on my iPhone, I have this several apps like Enclave AI, and it is able to go onto Hugging Face and download various models, obviously the smaller variants that can run on my phone. And Apertus will also be available in that way. And there's three particular examples that I've been looking at. On the left is LM Studio, in the middle is Ollama, and on the right is the Open Data Editor from Open Knowledge. And all three of them work really well with Apertus. And as long as you have the beef, right? So you need to have a powerful computer, or which right now for the 8B model, these are my recommendations. Your mileage may really vary, but 12 gigabyte, I would say, if you're running it on one of those cloud inference engines is the minimum. If you have a GPU like an NVIDIA GPU on your desktop computer, you need at least 16 gigabytes, and 24 if you are on an NPU machine like a MacBook or this Mac Mini is the minimum to really reliably run the models. So I will see if there's, thank you, Sabine, for sharing the link with us. And this is kind of what it looks like. So here on the left, I have a screenshot from LM Studio, and you can see, chatting with Apertus, you get responses, just like you would expect. You can also use RAG, uploading files and so on. In the middle is the Ollama user interface. On the right is kind of what developers are used to, kind of a console interface where you get a little bit of an extra information, like about the performance of the model that you can use to develop your apps with. But there's just a lot. There's a lot to learn around these different platforms and getting the model to work. Basically, yes, but to work sensibly and reliably, you're going to need to get into things like system prompts and temperature settings and so on, right? And it's great if you want to learn that and do it right now. This is the career path of choice, right? So a lot of people are actually very interested and learning to do this on their own. I think it's very exciting to see a community of AI enthusiasts growing in Switzerland, and a lot of it within the open source space. So people are sharing their tools, their code, everything openly, and learning from each other. One thing I'd just like to mention here is that there's a lot of debate about AI slop and what are these things that Apertus is generating. Like if you go onto my social media account on September 3rd, I think I posted my first kind of like output from Apertus, which I thought was making some coherent sense. And it was a poem in Swiss German, which I thought was pretty funny. My family thought it was hilarious, and hilarious because of its sloppiness, of its AI early days qualities, right? And especially if we're like the pioneers or almost like the parents of this new model, we can allow ourselves to delight and thrill in these, early generations. So, for example, here on the left is an SVG drawing that is generated directly from Apertus. Now, Apertus I forgot to mention, is a text-only model right now. This will change soon, but right now it's just generating text based on your text inputs. And if you want to create a picture or if you want to generate an audio clip, you need to connect it to other tools, right? You need to use like a pipeline of AI tools to do that. But you can kind of connive Apertus into generating things by thanks to the fact that it's quite good at generating code and math formulas. And SVG is a kind of code for generating drawings. And I don't know, there's something in this picture really speaks to me, right? But beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So that's kind of my quick intro to using Apertus. I would love to maybe propose as a small challenge. This is something that we've been doing in the SPIU calls, like post a prompt, right? Post something that you're doing with Apertus, or maybe share one of your last use cases. Feel free to do that in the chat, or just turn on your mic and we'll take your inspiration. So if you've also tried to make these like little renderings, or if you've posted something on your blog, feel free to share it with us. I will just switch to share with you what I just mentioned. I don't know if you should be still staring my screen, right? So this is my blog. I've been posting about Apertus quite a lot. So everything that I just showed you, you can find in my latest blog post from January 13th. It's kind of talks specifically about the Apple software, but it links to an earlier blog post where I also talk about kind of Windows and Linux versions in this Apertus Instruera post from the end of September. And just to give you another example, a few days ago, I wrote a blog post about computer history and things I'm a fan of, and then I used Apertus to generate a creative response, right? So this complete text was composed by artificial intelligence. In this case, I did like a different experience. I thought, okay, what's about if I do kind of a mixture of experts, right? So you can see that I actually used several bunch of models like Mistral, Claude, and Gemini. And then I asked Apertus to actually compose the text just to see what happens. So you can do all kinds of interesting experiments by feeding different bits in and kind of, in this sense, I'm giving Apertus a bit of a voice. I'm not anthropomorphizing it, I hope, too much, but I'm really saying, okay, well, there's a place on my blog and my publication to say for the machine to have its say, right? And there's actually a screenshot of me doing this within the public AI infrastructure. So this is kind of where I'd like to switch tracks. So as I said, at the beginning of September, besides having this kind of hobbyist approach, we all got to learn about this public AI interface. It was the one that was most visible in the media. If you go on YouTube and you search for Apertus review or a comparison or so, you'll see many people using it to explore the capabilities of Apertus. What is public AI? So if you go on publicai.co or publicai.ch, you see this website and you can just try Apertus, right? So we can say something like, what is the weather usually like in Davos? And immediately the 8B model gives us a quick and succinct response. I don't know, Sabine, if this matches your experience today, but yeah, I remember being quite slushy and chilly and so on. Obviously, this is not connected to real-time data sources, and it's only as good as the model as it's been trained and so on. But this is like immediate ability to play with Apertus for free without even logging in, right? If you're a developer, you can click for developers, and you can get an API key, and you can access a playground, and you get instructions. And basically, it's like many of these other API services from OpenRouter, from OpenAI, and so on. You get these endpoints, and you can chat with the model. There is a billing process in development. Currently, it's all completely free, but the idea of public AI is the idea is to create some like value-added services around public AI in a cooperative way, right? So right now, this is being run by a non-profit distributed organization, even a bunch of organizations, more like an interest group that's promoting this movement of public AI. If you'd like to really learn about it, there's a bit of more information at publicai.network. So you can read the white paper from Bertelsmann Stiftung making the case for this idea of AI as public infrastructure, right? I think we all kind of have thought about this, at which point does a digital tool become something like a public utility? For example, the past months, there's a lot of debate right now in Swiss schools about allowing smartphones. So my daughter's school was actually one of the first in the country to have a smartphone ban. This was very hotly debated. Like, how can you take smartphones away from children when children are spending all their time on smartphones? Wait a second. Right. So there's this question about what constitutes like an essential technology and who provides that technology. I mean, should the schools provide computers and smartphones and AI services? To what extent is the government responsible? Which branch of government? So we're still quite early in this debate, but I think globally there's just this clear awareness that if AI is going to work, it's going to work for everybody. It's just like, you don't want to have a huge digital divide. I mean, there is a massive digital divide. The question is, how are we going to reconcile it? And of course, it's also a major issue of control, right? So having AI that is publicly accountable, that reflects our values, and not just the values of a select group of very rich technocratic lobbyists, that's really the goal of the public AI as a movement, right? So it's really, right now, it's kind of an idea, it's a movement, but it's already generating really interesting results. So the fact that they've pulled this off using donation from AWS, Exascale, CSCS. So currently, this is running on the Alps supercomputer. Within the data facility around it. So it's running at the Swiss supercomputing infrastructure project CSCS, and it's completely donated, right? So right now it's in a best service. It might go down at any time, right? So if you're going to be building an app from this, just be aware, not only are there pretty small rate limits, 20 requests per minute, but also it's kind of really just a, until there's a, some kind of operating model really behind it, we can't provide more than the best we can in terms of support. And yeah, and what we've also been doing, and so this is the other thing, right? So if you log in, what you see is this chat window, right? And here, if you can ask the same question, so what's the weather usually like in Davos? And it gives you a response just as quick, except this time it's the 70B model, so the 70 billion parameter model, which is smarter. It's not necessarily wiser, right? It just has a lot more data in it, so it tends to give longer, more comprehensive responses. You can see here just already we're getting Fahrenheit temperature and something about the altitude and suggestions about whether we'd like to get more information. And this is running on a platform called Open Web UI, which is an open source, front end user interface, which looks a lot like ChatGPT or Gemini and all these things you're used to. In that you can, on the left, start chats, search through your history of chats, even take notes and use other collaborative features, right? So at any time you just expose a lot more functionality. You also can upload files, attach web pages, and insert other things into your conversation. You can also use dictation. Again, this is really fun with kids, this voice mode. I'm not going to turn it on right now, but you basically can speak and get immediate spoken responses. And it works pretty well if you stay on German, I find. At least, yeah. Your mileage may vary a lot, but it's definitely an interesting feature that would make it Apertus accessible to more people to be able to use text to speech. The dictation feature works also really well. These features are not powered by Apertus. They're going through the Open Web UI interface, connecting to Whisper model or other AI models to create a more integrated. And this is where we're starting to approach more the product, where the LLM is just a component of it. Behind this interface is also the system prompt, and this is quite important. So like basically there is kind of like a fundamental guardrail. A lot of work has been done in Apertus to make sure that it is not just fine-tuned, but also reinforced to be as moral and fair as possible and ethical. The system prompt references this and actually makes it important that you as a user are aware of these guardrails. Let's say I'm not sure I'm describing this the best way, but basically there's kind of several levels of instructions going in behind the scenes, and one of the fundamental things that the Public AI project has been doing was running this open source GitHub repository where the system prompt that's being used in the Chat Public AI platform is visible to all and actually can be discussed and revised. So you could see I did some revisions myself, and there's been a little bit of a back and forth. But this basically describes, okay, what are we using here? Okay, it's public AI, non-profit, open source, and then what are actually expectations? What are the standards that we can expect, right? So these system prompts, they exist in every kind of LLM project, but they're often not so visible to you. So sometimes you have to kind of wheedle out these system prompts out of the products you're using. And famously, with every like Anthropic Claude release, people are trying to figure out what are the difference actually in the guidelines that are being applied. And sometimes it's very transparently published, and sometimes you have to kind of guess, well, what are really the rules and why, right? The process of why how this is evolving. This should be like a participative process. We should all be able to understand to some extent the implications of how the LLM model is set up. And it's probably just a fundamental aspect of AI literacy to understand where this fits in. So anyway, you can find the system prompt on GitHub. I've set up a page with some other links. It's also published inside of the Apertus Tech Report, which, by the way, is still the best reference for everything Apertus related, just one long document which explains every part of it. And don't miss the appendices. There's the Appendix O in particular sets kind of really the principles of the system, and it's a super important and very interesting document to look into. Just see if there's any questions for me in the chat. Feel free to interrupt me if I should talk about. Isabel asks, the current playground mode is great, but I wonder about how the governance, the sovereignty is evolving parallelly. We should keep a clear frame so the pioneers are not abused. Thank you very much, Isabel, for that comment. So let's get into that. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that we're trying to build a cooperative system out of this. So what I've just been talking to you about is kind of the general guidance of the Apertus project, right? What have we been doing at SPIU, the Swiss Public Inference Utility? There's a website up, SPIU, is to try to extend this project into the next level. And essentially, first of all, to keep this going, because already if you look at the chat interface, you can see there's a number of other countries here. Singapore was launched, the C-line model was launched about the same time as Apertus. So that from the beginning, you could choose between the Swiss and the Singapore models. As a fun fact, you can do them in parallel. So you can actually see Switzerland and Singapore. What are your opinions on leaving bubble gum on the roads? And then you will actually get 2 responses, and they will, they can be easily compared. Apertus is very chatty about these things. And to keep this going, to keep this inference utility going, we need to continue to provide the infrastructure for this. And these models are actually also hosted on different data centers. So the idea is not just that the models are coming from research and development projects in those respective countries, but the actual computation work is being done there. So within Switzerland right now, it's really on the basis of donations and compute donations, not financial donations, and volunteer time. So we're thinking about how to make this more sustainable, and the proposal is to launch this association. So we're already quite a ways in. You can go on our webpage. You can find out about the everything I'm talking about. What's the idea of an LLM? Why should we have inclusive AI? And how does an inference utility help us? And how to join the movement? And to get back to Isabel's point, so the main thing about having this kind of additional entity is to have community governance, right? So if we have, let's say, these early adopters, these pioneers experiencing technical issues, there should be a forum to discuss this. If they're experiencing legal issues, maybe there should be also a forum to help resolve doubt or even help each other in the case of some kind of conflicts and so on, to be able to have a continued well-moderated discussion around these super central topics, right? And really to build this public AI together in Switzerland. So it's more than just this concept and this movement, but it's an actual service. And in the long run, like with every other utility, at some point, well back in the past, if you wanted to, I don't know, turn on a light bulb, you might have had to figure out how to get the electricity yourself, right? And now we just plug and play, and somehow it just works, right? There's this whole system of accounting in place, and of course a lot of government intervention to keep it running smoothly. There's a number of debates that our community is involved with at all kinds of levels, but also at the national kind of political level, to try to figure out, okay, where are all the things that would need to come together for these kind of inference utilities to be really viable. And also within the community, I mean, not just individual people, but hopefully more and more enterprises. Besides Public AI, of course, there were a number of other launch partners for Apertus. Most prominently, it was Swisscom. In fact, if you go on a subpage of our website, catalogs, spiu.ch, you can find these are the resources we prepared for the hackathon participants. So we actually went in and we described the AI services from Swisscom, and Swisscom provided us with free access to this in the first month, so we can give them some feedback and to test this out. This was really cool, and this needs to continue. We need to have this dialogue, which is maybe not just focused on the business end, not just the kind of marketing and business strategy focus, but also more kind of at the fundamental level of what do we want to achieve with this national platform. So there are other stories besides the business story. That's what I'm trying to say. And but of course, the business story is also really important, right? So with public AI, we can't compete, at the same level of service as Swisscom, right? But we're probably, I think we're serving a niche, which may include, like some parts of education, like some public schools, let's say, who would not necessarily be able to pay for really high-end AI service. And a lot of small businesses and startups that want to just get their feet on the ground, who don't really care about having 99.99%, service uptime, they would have these options. I also want to call out Infomaniac, who presented 2 aiLights ago. Swan's presentation was really cool. If you haven't seen it, definitely go on YouTube and check it out. The Infomaniac service was not available at the time, but it was. But I've tested it, and I can say it's really good. And it also has this kind of, with a few clicks, you're doing inference with different models within your web browser, deciding what services you really need, and then activating those features within your console. So I really like this kind of shopping cart approach, which they've already developed with a lot of other web services, web hosting services, and are now kind of smoothly activating in the LLM land. I would love to see the costs go down a little bit. The cost of activating Apertus on Infomaniac is quite high compared to even like OpenAI models. I have to ask why that is. If anybody knows, feel free to shout out the answer. But definitely, we'd like to see some more adoption going everywhere, including in all the business portals. Brandbot was also one of the early companies that was offering Apertus. And they also provided the hardware that I showed you earlier. That was their beefy Mac Mini that we used to do the testing during the hackathon of the energy costs of running Apertus. So I also know a bunch of others. So, the fact is that the marketplace is being created even within Switzerland. We're seeing some early competition. It's definitely not at the level of providing hosting, just basic hosting services. But over the course of the next years, hopefully we'll see really like 10 different companies you can approach to get AI hosted. Your applications hosting, your entire AI stack, right? Whatever that means, these different combinations of models and API keys, right? And again, this is where we need like some level of community governance. Like, what if people want to transfer their solution from one provider to another? What if they would like to export their chats or their customer data even? And what are some best practices there? And definitely when it comes to watching out for what the government is doing, making sure that continued investment goes into locally sourced, and definitely, we don't want people to just pick up Apertus just because it's Swiss. Again, it's not meant for Switzerland. It's a Swiss product for the world, and we have to really kind of drive that message. We really need people all over the world to give us some feedback here. So this cooperative should also include members from other countries, anyone who is interested in our project. But also, like, you wouldn't want just to advocate for Apertus because it is what it is, right? You would also want to make sure that you're providing solutions which are competitive with the market, right? So I think this community would also collect itself around kind of use cases and really good practices. And that I think would kind of just within the context for you would focus on this idea of public use, right? Really just keeping that aspect of practical tools. And one thing I'd really love to have a little bit of time for discussion or some more questions, but I'd really want to shout out to Sabine. For, remember I told you a bit about a few minutes ago about the system prompt, right? So we have another repository on this for public AI organization, where Sabine you've been more involved. Maybe you could even speak to this yourself. But we have this project called the Public AI MCP server. And this is this looks very technical, but actually it's really, the idea is to make AI as user-friendly as possible. by connecting these different AI services, as well as non-AI services, those data APIs like the weather, Meteo Schweiz, like the weather API, or the public transport API to each other. This is a kind of a technique that is not yet fully supported within Apertus. There are some workarounds to get it working, and this is a major area of development right now for the team. But I don't know, Sabine, do you want to tell everyone what you did with this?
I think so. It's a really a vibe coding approach, but I can dig into it a bit. But I was seeing there's Olivier raised his hand for some time, and it would be great if we can jump in. Sorry that we didn't see it earlier. So Olivier.
No problem. Thank you very much, Sabine and Oleg. Really, really interesting. I have a question about, as you mentioned, one of the key features of Aperture is to be compliant to Swiss law and EU laws. Could you please elaborate a little bit? Is it, for example, the AI Act only, or is it also the RGPD data privacy rules as well? And the second piece of the question, how did you qualify your model regarding the compliance to those laws?
Okay, so I did not develop the model, so I can only provide you a second-hand answer to this.
Okay.
You would really need to talk to my colleagues at the AI Center, and they've had some presentations. In fact, they've had some presentations specifically. They actually have a legal team. One of the top specialists in the country has been consulting us, and there's a presentation there which goes into a lot more details. Basically, it's like this, right? You have to make an effort, right? Apertus is one of the only project that is really making an effort from the beginning, from the initial training design, to be compliant with data, and specifically looks at Article 53 of the EU AI Act in order to do that, right? So actually thinking we're going to focus on public data, we're going to respect opt-out, so we're going to collect data from the web, but we're going to remove everything that we feel that we can. And avoiding memorization is one of these big copyright issues, right? The LLMs spitting, whole pages of Harry Potter out or whatever, right? And or artists being annoyed by seeing their work and their designs in the outputs, right? So memorization is actually an innovative technique used within the development of Apertus that prevents some of these issues from occurring. There's work going into removing personally identifiable information, toxic and harmful data being filtered. All this work is also being done by the commercial companies. Some of them want to be within the law, obviously, right? But we don't really know how they're doing it, to what extent they're doing it, and it is doubtful, except in the case of Mistral being the French commercial project. It's doubtful that they would really, pay much attention to the details of the EU law, right? And in the case of Switzerland, this there's this memorandum, this guidance about the use of it. There's this convention with the Europe, right, trade agreement, and again, this is also something that is being incorporated into the design. This aspect, right? But it's also, I have to say, it's really important to realize this cannot be just the model that provides us. The LLM is never going to police itself, right? You need to have the policing external to the model, and that has a lot to do with the way it is used. It also has a lot to do with the responsibility that the users take upon themselves. So maybe we do need, we all hate cookie banners, but we're going to need something like a cookie banner to, for example, to offer AI services to minors, I think, in the future, right? So we need to be able to tweak some of these guardrails also in real time, and make sure they're applied, and kind of have this idea of a firewall, which we're very, very familiar with, on our computing infrastructure. But when we're using AI, we're not aware of all these aspects, basically. I don't know if that answers the question very well. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the compliance side.
No, perfectly. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Great. And Oleg, there's another question you might read during. Sure. I'm telling a bit about this MCP tooling. So some of you might know. So my background is now soon to be data science. So I'm not a developer or something. So I've been vibe coding for many years now. but I'm not into really code like Jörg. Jörg is here on the call, so he can do it, right? And what I saw some months ago was a challenge offered by ETH in terms of what kind of services, what kind of useful services can we build on top of public AI based on these MCP servers. And I was thinking, okay, would I access this kind of chatbot to get train data or weather data? And I thought, no, I think there are some other channels for that. And then I was thinking, could have been helpful to get these Abstimmungsbüchlein, you all know, right? In a smarter way in terms of, okay, can I ask, okay, when is the next ballot initiative? What is it about? What is the pro? What is the cons, and so on? And then I was trying, based on the help of Claude Code, to build such an MCP tool, and was trying to implement this in public AI, and it was a try, right? So it didn't connect well. So it's nice that you give a shout out on that, but it only worked locally. So at the moment, I have inserted that kind of chatbot idea of a Swiss ballot initiative chatbot into a thesis survey. So I can share a bit, I can share a link about that. And this is working well and showing all the information, and you can access all the information of the website swissvotes.ch, and is accessing the CSV file, right, and some PDF files with a temperature of 1.0 or so. So it's really factual. And so this is a story about that, Oleg. So it's not that fancy.
Yes, it's not fancy, but you're touching upon so many super important things, like the fact that you've mentioned vibe coding, which is a huge topic of interest to people. Probably every hackathon right now features 90% vibe coding, and so many people are getting into like really intense AI development where they're using a lot of tokens and testing a lot of vendors through the vibe coding topic. I hope this will I'm sure this will come up in more of the future aiLights sessions, which you'll have. And then this MCP technology, we don't need to go into a lot of details. I mean, it came out of Anthropic, and it's kind of becoming now a standard for, universal standard for connectivity between the AI apps. I think one really good way to visualize this, if you go to Hugging Face Spaces, there's this AI app directory, and you can actually see here there's a bunch of like Apertus projects, and Hugging Face provides its own framework called Gradio, which some of these are running, and you can talk to the Apertus model using MCP. So you can actually have multiple versions of Apertus talking to each other. One is fine-tuned as a lawyer, and one is fine-tuned as I don't know, a scientist, and they can kind of interact through this more efficient protocol that allows data to be exchanged, right? And this AI app directory is actually quite huge. If you look at topics like image generation or text generation, you will find lots and lots of these apps. And then if you're wondering, well, how could I use multiple of these apps at the same time? You can just filter by MCP compatible, and then you can immediately start connecting with them with just a couple of clicks. So the idea is also kind of to leverage this within our cooperative setting, so people can start building MCP apps for data sets that are useful to them. I mean, this could be Swiss open government data, for example. On all of these topics, you could imagine the need for some kind of current information, and being able to access that through an MCP service would just make a lot of sense. And there are people actually already doing that. And we'd like to just bring that community together. We're probably going to set up like a wiki, like an awesome Apertus kind of page, and just list everyone who is doing something in this area together to get them connected, and then maybe do some events in the future. And of course, the big question is, when can we actually host this, right? So you can see me, I just live asked Public AI what tools are available. And this is Public AI Plus. This is not currently generally available. This is you have to apply for access. It's really, really beta, even alpha. But this allows you to see kind of the public AI tools that are being developed within the different communities around Singapore. And in Switzerland, we already have the ability to search Swiss stations to use that kind of public transport data. And it works. When I say, what are the next departures from the train station to Bern, it gives me accurate departures and reminds me that our time is coming to an end. But this is not working with Apertus. Unfortunately, Apertus does not currently support the tooling mode. And fully, so this will be the 1.5 or maybe even 2.0 release of Apertus, where we can really combine this within the Switzerland infrastructure. In this case, we're using, I believe, the GLP model to test this out. But the good thing about MCP is that it's pretty much cross-platform. You don't need to rewrite these apps. They should work immediately with Apertus once the support is there. I thought I'd maybe also just take this question about inherent disadvantages that was posted by Florian. Do you think that ethically aligned open models like Apertus, built to respect copyright data protection rules, face inherent disadvantage compared to proprietary models, which are rather intransparent? And this question comes up, I think, in a lot of in almost every one of the discussions within the Swiss AI community when we're talking about Apertus. There's definitely disadvantage. There's actually a paper called hold on, let me just show you, because we actually started a new Zotero library, so I don't need to remember everything. I've put this here. This is a paper called "Can Performant LLMs Be Ethical?" Which was worked on by members of the Apertus team, and it really describes this data compliance gap, which is really the performance difference between models which respect opt-outs, which respect not just the law but the principles of the open web community. And what is the penalty, right? So if you go down here, you can actually see when they take out, for example, news articles, right? So you have this difference between being compliant and non-compliant, and then actually also having just the news articles removed. What the performance hit is like, right? And it's a significant percentage for sure, right? So when you're this inherent disadvantage is just the clear quality of being more focused. But there's also a flip side to this, right? Which has a lot to do with just this fact that there's this massive race to the top going on. Every vendor, if you go on the leaderboards, like LLM Arena, for example, and you try to see what is the top AI model in the world. You're going to see these big models with hundreds of billions of parameters vying for the top of the leaderboard. But are they actually better for every use case, for everything that you want to accomplish in your life, in your scientific or in your other work? The answer is no. A bigger model actually can trip up in its own shoelaces very often. It extends an enormous amount of energy kind of correcting itself and trying to come up with a super intelligent answer. But it's actually much more removed from the kind of tooling that we're used to as programmers. I'm reading this great book right now, which argues quite well that, and I'll put the link afterwards in the notes, that this mode that we're used to as software engineers and developers is extremely valuable, and we should not lose sight of this. In these times of these massive races, we should really remember that it is kind of this practical ability to connect your thoughts into something comprehensive and to really activate your intuition. You need to work with tools you can really trust and relate to. And these gigantic models, they're totally out of your control. They just by property of being so gigantic, they're really like these they add a whole level of complexity that you're unable to deal with. And just to give you one quick example of this, this is from a presentation I gave a few days ago at the University of Bern, where I introduced public AI to a government audience, talking about our hackathon and so on. I showed them this ability to use MCPs, and then I linked this to one of the really important projects of the government, this interoperability platform, to show that ChatGPT is getting it wrong. ChatGPT makes mistakes, and it doesn't tell us about something that is like a government topic. And you can get Apertus to understand this, and you can maybe even the smaller, the 8B version of Apertus, maybe that's even better for you if you're creating like something like FedLex or TermDat, like a government application that needs to be very clearly codified and very reliable and really produce the same answer over and over again to get really that reproducible result. Maybe smaller models will actually give you an advantage, and definitely models where that this is being ethically developed and legally trained, that you're not going to get into hot water soon with lawyers. That's probably also something to be aware of.
Oleg?
Yes.
Sorry, I have to raise my hand, but I couldn't find the function here on Zoom.
No worries.
Can you go on the chat? During the AlpinTech forum, they showed this, and they explained that inherently open weight and open source models are not, especially open weight models, are not as protected as much. Can you just elaborate on that? I think that's quite interesting to hear for everyone as to why they're not so inherently protected. On the chat, you can see this.
The screenshot. With security comparison frontier models before and after mitigation.
It might be interesting to hear.
This is kind of really out of context. I would love to see where this is coming from, but I mean,
this has to do that inherently models like Apertus are not as protected. Because as they're open weight, they were explaining that in the end they should be more protected. So I thought this is something that was an information during the AlpinTech forum which brought a lot of discussion. I thought maybe you can elaborate or just.
I'd love to have a whole session about this. I think this is a super important topic, and I think really like having a cooperative around public inference. We should definitely deal with cybersecurity, information security, and AI security. And this is really an AI security topic. And it relates a lot to this discussion that's going on for decades around open source. Is open source more secure out of the box or not? Right. If you're gonna protect your secrets and keep your bugs close to yourself, are you going to end up with a better enterprise product? And you can't. I mean, of course, I would say like first glance, this is just marketing. Just people saying, oh, okay, these guys are spending less time and effort. They have less money to develop guardrails, to hire security specialists, to just run 1 million tests on the model before it's released. Therefore, it's bad. But that actually doesn't speak at all to the technical architecture in place or just that open weights model. But let's definitely dig into this soon.
Thank you.
So I see Sabine would like to have us wrap up now.
I was just thinking about Mike's question. Thank you, Mike. So I'm just sharing the next sessions here, and I think we have to wrap up. So Oleg, thanks again for a really great session on that. So as far as I remember, the cooperative, there is a meeting coming up, right, where the people can sit together and found it. When is it? Can you share it?
So I didn't have time to update the webpage this morning, but it will be the 9th of February at the Open LLM, what's it called? Open Business LLM Summit.
It'll be Builder Summit or something,
Builder
right?
Summit, exactly. It'll be just one day before the Applied Machine Learning Days, where we will also have lots and lots of Apertus content. You can find me there at the EPFL. And more events coming down. We're actually thinking of organizing an event at the end of February right here in Liebefeld near Bern to really launch this cooperative. So right now, just go on SPIU.ch, hit refresh every couple of days. There'll be lots of new things coming out there. And if you want to get involved, there's some links at the bottom to our completely open source and open discussions. You can get in touch with us by email, by Slack, etc.
Great. So I just joined in the Swiss AI Award last night, where the Apertus team won the recognition award. So Emmanuel was there, and he also mentioned, okay, there will be this 1.5 version coming in spring. It's still spring, right? But it will have the image capability and the MCP or the tooling, right? So I'm not sure about the voice element, but imaging and tooling. So very much looking forward to that next version. We are trying to set up sessions with all the hosting providers of Apertus, that you all get to know more about that. I heard yesterday as well that Swisscom is still offering hosting for Apertus. I wasn't sure about that. And Phoenix Technology is another one, right? And so we are trying to set this up that you get a broad overview. And of course, we are open to use cases, right? If anybody of you is playing around with a model like Mike is doing for his project Mut zur Lücke, then please feel free to reach out that we can support this and maybe, I don't know, do a landing page, put it on SPIU or somewhere. So thanks a lot. And I'm very happy that it all worked out due to this technical outage this morning.
Thank you so much, Sabine. Sorry
Thank
for
you, Oleg.
Really
really appreciate it. So for
great to see
all of you, have a great day. Yeah, see you maybe tomorrow morning at 8:30 about AI browsers.